Welcome back to the McCoy Leadership Podcast, elevating your impact through valuable insights and conversations about leadership. Welcome back to another episode of the McCoy Leadership Podcast, and boy, do we have a treat for you today. We have Stacy Chazin here. Stacy is a dynamic leadership development coach and a proud introvert. I'm not going to lie, folks. I was a little concerned when I saw a proud introvert. I wasn't sure if it would be a one-sided interview or what might happen there. So I think Stacy's going to give us a lot of great information and maybe explain a little bit more of what an introvert really is. Stacy, you want to give us a little bit of background, and how did an introvert end up being a coach and on podcast?
Amos, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me on your show. And you're starting off right away with some myths about, or you're hinting at some myths about introverts and introversion that I'm very excited to debunk today. So I'm Stacy Chazin. I'm the founder of the I Factor coaching practice focused on igniting introverted leadership. And I guide introverted professionals who are seeking to build their confidence and show up more powerfully at work so they can get recognized for their contributions, gain promotions that they've earned, and feel overall more fulfilled in the jobs that they're doing so they can become the leaders they're meant to be, really tap into the best of who they are inside.
So, right off of the bat, you just said it, helping introverts become more successful. So introverts can be leaders and successful business owners, lead Fortune 500 companies, whatever the case may be. Is that right?
1,000,000% right. Yes. And go ahead.
Well, no. So, where in your life did you figure out, what was that turning point where you were like, I'm an introvert, but I'm going to get past this and I'm going to figure out how to leverage it?
Yep. Great question. So I would say that my journey actually started when I was in preschool. I think that's true for many of us. And that's because as soon as we begin socializing with others, we're in social environments, we're out in the world, we begin to hear messages that the way that we're wired, the way we like to behave, to play with others or to not play with others, is somehow less than. It's somehow not as good as if we were more social, if we had more friends. Our preschool teachers will tell us, or our parents, she doesn't play with the kids enough, or she likes to go off and build a tower of blocks on her own. It would be better if she played more with others. And we hear these messages, they continue through elementary school and high school and even into college. Having more friends, going out on a Saturday night is somehow better than if we want to have fewer friends or, heaven forbid, want to stay home and read a book on a Saturday night. We hear these messages, and I heard these messages that made me feel that there was something wrong with me, that the way that other people, and I learned the word extrovert as I grew older, that somehow being extroverted was preferable to being introverted. And I'd love to take a breath here and share a little bit, do some level setting around terminology. When we're talking about introverts or extroverts, we technically say someone has a preference for introversion or a preference for extroversion. And those terms are used primarily in the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator Framework, or MBTI, which I'm certified in. MBTI is the world's most commonly used personality assessment, and it reveals how an individual is wired, what their default settings are, so to speak, in terms of when we're talking about introversion or extroversion, how we get or lose our energy with the world around us. So somebody who is introverted, like myself, tends to be energized by spending time alone or with just one or two other people, when we have opportunities to go deep in a subject matter area, when we have an opportunity to think through ideas before we share them. Whereas someone who is extroverted is more energized by engagement with other people. They're going to be at their best when they have an opportunity to think out loud, so to speak, to be more social. That's what energizes them. But if we go out in the world as introverts like that, we tend to be drained by that type of engagement. So that's just one of the four pieces that a Myers-Briggs tells us.
So I'm starting to identify a little bit here. I've been known to tell people that I don't like people. And now when I say that, what I'm really saying is, I think to your point, in a situation where there's a whole bunch of people, it drains me. I'm tired, exhausted. It's not that I can't do it, but it drains me. I need to go have that time by myself or doing something that I enjoy to re-energize.
Absolutely. And what you just said there, when I tell people I don't like people, and that's one of the myths about introverts. People say, oh, you don't like people, or that's what I think. If you tell me you're an introvert, that's an assumption I'm going to make. And then conversely, and I think this is even more interesting, many people who are introverts don't think they are introverted because they like people. And they think to themselves, if I were introverted, I wouldn't want to be around others. I wouldn't have friends. And it prevents us from introverts. It prevents us from embracing that big part of ourselves that really is a gift. So to go back to your question, how did I discover and how did I say enough is enough? I had some experiences when I first began my career. I started getting feedback in my annual performance review, or even more informally, that I needed to be more engaging with other people, that I was coming across as aloof, that I wasn't friendly enough. And I could go down a whole other path about whether that's appropriate for a performance review. But I started hearing that, and I thought, that's not really who I am. I am friendly. I do like people. And I wasn't sure what that was about. And I had an opportunity. One of my employers about 15 years ago gave us all a Myers-Briggs assessment to take. And we had a workshop with a leadership coach who gave everyone their reports and then helped us to understand how seeing the 4 letters in our respective Myers-Briggs profiles, that all of those letters, regardless of what your letters are, so I am an ISTJ in Myers-Briggs speak, introverted, sensing, thinking, and judging. No matter what your mix of letters is, you have a set of strengths that is unique to you. And it started when I read my report. I told someone that I felt like the report was a window to my soul, that it just really got me. And it highlighted for me that characteristics associated with my introversion and the ways I'm wired were actually gifts. They weren't shortcomings. And instead of trying to pretend they didn't exist, to try to act more extroverted and to feel badly about the introvert who I am, that being an introvert is actually a pretty great thing. And when I shifted my mindset in that way, my whole attitude about showing up at work, about being a leader, about engaging with others completely transformed. And I became a much happier, productive, effective leader.
So in reality, your introversion became your superpower, is what you're saying.
It is. That's 100% what I'm saying. Yes.
That is awesome. So I believe on your website, the tagline is "Introversion is your leadership superpower."
Yes.
Can you unpack what it means really, or how a person can leverage that superpower that maybe they have that they look at as a curse, but maybe it's really a superpower?
Yeah. And so the idea is to take a look at who you are as an introvert, who you are as an overall human, but focusing on your introversion and identifying the key pieces of introversion, the key traits that live within you. So each introvert, each person is unique. So these strengths are not going to apply to everyone. But what I'm going to talk about are some behaviors, traits, characteristics that tend to be associated with introversion. And one of the things I do in my coaching practice through the I Factor is I use a framework called appreciative coaching, through which I help my clients identify what's known as their positive core. Now, your positive core is essentially the best of who you are. And so what we do is we reflect on experiences that we call them peak experiences. So times in your life, particularly at work, where you felt like you were having the biggest impact, where you felt great about what you were doing, that you had an opportunity to optimally contribute. And when you look across those peak experiences, you'll identify different behaviors, roles, opportunities that are common threads across those experiences. So how did you show up? For an introvert, it could be that you had an opportunity to write. Writing is a really common part of an introvert's positive core, myself included. You might say, all of these times where I felt like I was making the biggest contribution, I wrote an issue brief, I wrote a proposal, I wrote a new business plan. And you'll begin to see, okay, writing is probably part of my positive core, my strengths as an introvert. Another common strength for introverts is they tend to be very good at thinking deeply and having strategic vision. So you might see across your peak experiences that you played roles writing a strategic plan, meeting with a potential client and talking with them to understand what their strategic needs are so you could create a proposal that was best aligned with what they needed.
So I'm just kind of backing up as it just hit me that, once you identify that it's your superpower, it doesn't change the fact that you're still introverted. So other leaders that are coming in, so maybe I'm the CEO and I'm just highly energetic, outgoing, and I am the typical extrovert. And I have these direct reports that I'm looking at and saying, all right, they're introverts and I need to change them, because I've over the years encountered this. One time early in my career, I got what I thought was a compliment, but it really, was meant to be not a compliment. And one of my supervisors said, he is a great practitioner, but has terrible bedside manner. And what he really meant was he's really good at diagnosing the problem, but he's not that great at working with people. And so I knew I needed to work on working with people, but at the same time, I was very happy that I was being recognized as a great practitioner, somebody that could solve a problem. So what would be the suggestion to leaders? What should they be trying to change people is what I'm really getting at, or should they be looking to help those people leverage their superpower to make a better team?
Yeah, they absolutely should not be trying to change people. Anytime we try to change ourselves, pretend to be something we're not, or someone tries to get us to be something we're not, it's not going to work out well. You can just pretend for so long. And a great example I'll give you, and I use this with my coaching clients, is I ask my client to pick up a pen with their dominant hand, and I ask them to sign their name. And I say, what did that experience feel like? And they'll typically say, oh, mindless, easy. And then I ask them to put the pen in the other hand and to do the same thing. And I say, what did that feel like? And they typically say, oh, it was awkward. It didn't come out as good. It was uncomfortable. So when we the same analogy applies to your introversion and your extroversion. If you're an introvert, that's your dominant hand. And when you use your dominant hand, you're always going to feel more comfortable. You're going to produce a better signature, do better work, and you're going to contribute when you're using your strengths as an introvert. When you're encouraged to use those, rather than trying to dip into the side of you that does not come naturally, you're gonna contribute a whole lot better. And so as a manager, as a leader, the key is to identify in your team members, what are their gifts? And this is true for introverts or extroverts. But if we talk about your introverted employees, the people you manage, what are they really good at? What gives them life? When do they seem to be most excited to contribute, to come to work? When are they most productive? And when you as a leader or a manager can identify those traits and then give your team members opportunities to use them, to show up in ways that let them apply what they're great at, you're going to get much better work out of them. They're going to be happier, and your teams are going to function a whole lot better.
I don't know. That sounds like a lot of work. I mean, wouldn't it be easier if I just fired all the introverts and hired all extroverts? Wouldn't that be easier?
Is it going to be easier? No. And I'll tell you why. Because you're going to miss out. And I know you're joking. You're going to miss out on all the gifts that introverts bring to the table. The strategic thinking, the writing. One really big one that would be a loss if you did something crazy like that is introverts tend to be highly empathetic and have very high levels of emotional intelligence. So we're very good at reading between the lines, on picking up on nuances, looking at a situation that might be contentious at a meeting or in a business relationship, and being able to identify what individuals' priorities are, what their emotional needs are. And that allows us to diffuse conflict. It allows us to respond to priorities and needs of others in ways that are going to be a lot more effective and impactful. So keep your introverted team members.
So, all right, I'm bought in now. I'm going to keep them. What are some practical steps that I could help those introverted employees that I see potential that maybe they could become a leader someday? What are some practical steps I can take to help them? Or maybe it's me and I'm the introvert and I know that I desire to move up and to become a leader. How do I go about that?
Yeah. Well, let's start with the first part of your question. As a manager, you want to understand what your team members need to be most successful. And you can do that and find that out in a couple of ways. One idea that I love to share that resonates is the first time a group comes together, a team or a project team, or you have a new member join, to go around the table and have everyone share what is one thing you want the rest of the group to know about what you need to be successful. And that's your opportunity as an introvert or an extrovert to share, for example, I'm going to do my best work when I have an opportunity to think about a question ahead of time, or when I have an opportunity to contribute my ideas in writing, or when I have opportunities, it's very important for me to have a balance of collaborative work time and individual work time. And as a manager, you want to know that about your team members. So you can do that in a group setting, or introverts might be more comfortable doing that one-on-one, to sit down with each team member and say, what do you need to be successful here? And when you hear that an introvert needs opportunities to contribute in writing, that you want to make sure that your introverted employees have time to work by themselves on a project, and it's not always collaborative. It's very important for introverts to get a meeting agenda ahead of time so they can plan what they're going to say. And I can share with you later, I have a free resources page on my website, ifactorleadership.com, where I have a number of free resources for your audience, including a guide to how can you have your voice heard in meetings as an introvert. And that's one of the tips. Make sure you have the agenda ahead of time so you can get your thoughts together and come prepared. So as a manager, that's what you want to do. What do my employees need to be successful, to be productive, to be happy, and then make sure they have those opportunities so that they can bring their gifts to the table. And you're going to benefit from that as a team and as an organization.
So what I'm picturing in my mind is that, you go into an office setting and everybody has their cubicle, and maybe they have a sign there that says I'm an introvert or I'm an extrovert. And I'm kind of in my mind thinking that as well, we need to prepare ourselves as leaders when we're going to talk to those people and kind of switch gears maybe and think about how we're going to communicate and how we're going to get them or how we're going to allow them to work within their superpowers. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm exaggerating. I'm sure that we can't hang signs, we could, but think about how easy it would be if we knew when we were walking into somebody's office, even applying, I'm a disc consultant, and even applying on that side, I knew when I walked in that I'm going into a D's office, so I need to be short and abrupt, or not abrupt, but short, bullet pointed, and get to the point and get out, as opposed to going into somebody's office that maybe you want to sit down and have a conversation with. So kind of along those lines, and maybe I'm trying to make a connection where there isn't one, but what I'm curious is when you are interacting with all of the people around you, if you're interacting with an extrovert, you maybe have to be prepared to talk about the weekend, what's going on, the new dog, all of those things, to make them feel comfortable to be able to give information or have a productive meeting, whereas the introverts may really want to get down to business pretty quickly. Is that accurate?
Yeah, for the most part. Right. It's going to depend on the person. But yes, as an introvert, and I will speak about me and the clients that I work with. Yes, I like to get down to business. I've grown to appreciate the value of the relationship building at the beginning of a meeting or the beginning of a call, which I used to think was a waste of time. Right. That it was, what's the word? like hippy dippy out there, like, oh, all this soft, we're wasting time. And we just wasted 5 minutes with doing this icebreaker. I don't need to know what everyone's favorite ice cream flavor is. But I have grown to see the value of that something like that helps us to connect as humans. And that it's not just about the business. And when we have that human connection, the business part is going to go a whole lot better. So I think to answer your question, it might be our preference to get down to business, but we also need to recognize that we need to lean outside of our comfort zone sometimes, and doing those more engaging activities that might not be what we would pick to do. There's going to be value in doing that.
So I'm kind of going, I guess, in a different line, but I'm also thinking once you become a leader, I have noticed over the years, I believe those that are introverts sometimes still under pressure revert back to, kind of shrinking inside of that. So like, for instance, maybe rather than going and having a conversation with somebody that's doing something wrong, they maybe create a new policy for the entire company that covers what that one person is doing, and so how do you remind yourself, to continue to use that superpower and not hide behind it, I guess is my question.
That's a great question. I haven't been asked that before. I think hopefully as a leader, if you're the CEO, for example, hopefully you've developed that self-awareness of who you are, how you're wired. And there was a Harvard Business Review article that came out a few years ago called something like the notion of the incomplete leader. And the idea there is that each person, no one person can have every single leadership skill you need to be successful. But what you need to have is the self-awareness of which strengths you do have and which you don't, so that you can surround yourself with people who fill in those holes for you. So as a leader, it's very important to have that self-awareness that, engaging with someone around an area of deficiency and giving them feedback on it, that's not something I'm good at as a leader. I need to tap into my people, to my team members. Maybe it's my HR director for guidance on how to do that. It's really important to have that self-awareness, to know what you're good at, to know where you might be lacking, so you can fill the holes with others, fill those gaps with people who have those complementary strengths.
And I think, too, it would probably be important that those people that you're surrounding yourself with will help to hold you accountable a little bit, to say, hey, that's not your strong point. Maybe you ought to let me handle that, or I can do that, and have that open line of communication.
Yeah, that's a great point. You're totally right.
So kind of switching gears a little bit, thinking about creating your dream business and being an introvert, I'm kind of curious, what advantages do introverts have when it comes to entrepreneurship and creating something new?
Mm-hmm. Well, the idea here is that when you're creating something new, you're launching a business as an introvert, you want to do it in a way that taps into your strengths, into your positive core. So if you try to go about and do it the way you think you're supposed to, which is, and face it, we live in an extrovert aligned world. I think when people think what makes a powerful leader, you picture this extrovert in front of the room. When you think about what makes a powerful, successful entrepreneur, same thing, someone who's gregarious and constantly networking and putting themselves out there. Doing it the way the extroverts do it is not going to work for you if you're an introvert. So there are a couple things. One is networking. Right? So if you try to network as an introvert in the entrepreneurial space, in this typical way when we all think about networking, it's going to drain your energy. You're not going to feel good about it. You're going to try to avoid it. So how can you do it as an introvert? So I recommend if you're going to a conference, you're going to an event, do your research ahead of time for however many days you're going to be there. Let's say it's a 3-day conference. Identify 3 people per day who you want to meet. Research them, visit their LinkedIn page or their website. Identify ahead of time, what do you want to get out of the conversation? What do you want to share? And come prepared. So you find your people, you meet them, you're not having to engage in too much small talk because you've prepared ahead of time, and you're able to create deeper relationships with a fewer number of people, which is probably going to serve you a whole lot better than trying to collect 50 business cards around the room in an evening, which will deplete you and probably not help you so much with relationship building.
It makes sense. And, the other thing I'm kind of drawing a line or between is that I think oftentimes introverts can be very task oriented, because, they need to think ahead a little bit and maybe, make sure having the meeting agenda ahead of time, making sure, to your point, who do I want to talk to? And what just hit me was one of the things I do personally is many times I will put those things that I know I'm a little bit weaker at, but I still have to do because I run a business. I will put them as a task on my task list, which is very important for me that I get those things done. So if I get it on there, now it becomes something that I will do and I will work on. Whereas if I just kind of say, oh, I really ought to walk around town today and talk to some people, I'll never do it. But if I put a task on my list to say, I need to go next door to the hotel and see what kind of meeting space they have and see if I can work out a deal for the next event that I have all of a sudden. And it'll be a good experience for me.
Yeah.
It's just that I got to put it in that context for myself.
And that's a great level of self-awareness. You know what you need, right? I know if I go to a conference, I need to not stay for the entire cocktail hour each night. Yep. Because I will get cranky. It's going to deplete my energy. I'm going to be exhausted. I'm not going to show up as my best self. So that's one piece of it. Another piece is you want to design a business that's going to align with your energy. And so for me, and for many other, that could be something like instead of teaching people live, it could be doing an online course. It could be coaching one-on-one, which is what I do as well. I do a lot of writing in my business. These are all things that align with my energy and my need to work deeply and in many cases in solitude for a while to create what I know is going to be my best work product and show up as my best self when I'm engaging with other people. So you want to think of what's a business that you want to launch that is going to fuel your energy over time. Because while you might have one given day where you're drained because maybe it's been a little too people-y for you as an introvert, if you have days like that over an extended period of time, you're going to burn out. And that's going to affect your physical, your psychological, your emotional health, and you're not going to be a happy, healthy human, and you're probably not going to be a successful entrepreneur either.
Interesting. I'm assuming when people call you for one-on-one coaching, they've done their research and they're calling because maybe they feel stuck or they're at a barrier that they need to get past. What are some of the most common barriers that you see when you're coming in to work with people that you have been able to help them overcome?
Oh, great question. And the biggest one by far is that they don't recognize their strengths. They feel badly about who they are as an introvert, and and I guess this is the second biggest thing I think that flows from that is they lack confidence. So they don't feel good about who they are. They don't recognize the strengths they bring to the table as an introvert. And as a result, they're hesitant to speak up. They're hesitant to advocate for themselves. And the vision they have for their long-term career prospects are self-diminished. They think that they're not going to be able to reach the mountaintop. They don't even see that as a goal for themselves because they lack the confidence to get there. They don't know how. They don't think they have the strengths, and the strengths they may recognize, they don't know how to use them.
So, what, in your opinion, would be one daily habit or mindset shift that an introvert could apply today that would help them to start down this journey?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say that at the end of each day, to reflect on your wins and journal them, capture them in a journal or in a spreadsheet, whatever floats your boat, whatever you like to use, and consider how your introverted traits contributed to those accomplishments. And you'll be able to see that on a day-to-day basis, not only are you succeeding, but what's helping you to succeed is, in fact, your introversion.
Interesting. I just, at the end of 2024, I took a master class, and through this master class, one of the things that they had us do, they called it a brag journal, we were to keep a daily journal of things that we had been successful with, or, things that we were overly excited we had completed. And so I'm speculating a little bit because I think I fall in this same category. At first, I thought, well, this is kind of dumb. I don't need to do this. I mean, what do I have to write in here? And they kind of coached us over the next couple of days, and it's something that I've now continued to do. And it also helped me to recognize how my strengths can help me, or what my strengths were, and where I'm most successful, and then hence maybe where I want to spend a little more of my time. So I think that's a neat tool that anybody can do, and it doesn't really cost anything.
Yeah. And you can look back at it when you're having a sad day, or you're feeling not great about work or yourself. You can pull that out and say, look at all these great things I've done.
So again, where can our audience find, what was that website again, where they can find some of the tools and things that you have, as well as how to connect with you?
Thanks for asking. So my website is ifactorleadership.com. If you go to ifactorleadership.com/resources, I have a number of free tools, including a conference survival guide. So how can you go to a big conference and not be drained of energy and meet your goals? A meetings playbook for having your ideas heard at meetings, and also have some daily productivity hacks to help you as an introvert tap into your gifts to become more productive. Folks can also go on there to find my online course, which is called the Introverts Leadership Formula. That's going to be open the week of March 3rd through March 7th. It'll be open for enrollment. And that course is a series of self-paced videos where you can learn how to communicate more powerfully, prevent introvert burnout, so to maximize your energy, the energy that you get each day, prevent the energy drain. And then literally, how do you ask for a promotion, a raise, make other asks of your manager and your boss to get what you want at work in ways that make it really hard for them to say no. So you can find information about the Introverts Leadership Formula on my website as well, ifactorleadership.com.
That is awesome. And I'm just thinking, I mean, how cool is that? A class coming up for introverts that is self-paced video. You don't have to stick stickers on anything or get up and speak in front of anybody. I mean, it's perfect. And
that's right.
I think when we're done, I am headed over to the conference survival guide because we are at that time of the year where we have conferences coming up, and that might be very, very helpful for me as well.
Terrific.
So we always like to end each episode with a little bit of a fun session where kind of rapid fire. I have a few questions that I ask every guest. And the first question really derived out of all of these conversations that I have been having with different leadership folks around the country, really around the world, as well as talking with clients. Many times there's something that is said around the nature of students aren't learning this, or here's something you won't learn in school, those types of comments. And it really got me thinking that let me start asking all the leadership experts that I talk to, if we had all the school administrators, elementary, middle, and high school across the world sitting in front of us, what would be, what would be your one piece of advice that you would like to give them of something that they could include in curriculum or in school that would help us and help those students graduate as much better, well-rounded, productive members of society that might become leaders someday?
Fabulous question. And I think that I would love to see in school curricula, I would love to see students taught how to recognize their strengths. I didn't do a Myers-Briggs until I was, 40 years old or something. It's something that most people don't do till they're adults. It doesn't have to be Myers-Briggs. But how do you recognize the strengths that you bring to the table as an individual, that so that when you're going to college, when you're going out into the world as a professional, as a potential future leader, that you have that self-awareness of what you bring to the table. So you don't have to pretend to be something you're not. You can feel good about who you are, and you can begin to learn how to use those strengths to be productive, to be contributing, and really to be happy.
Awesome. I like that. And even myself, I have said many times that, until I learned to be comfortable with who I was and what my strengths were and my weaknesses, until I really became comfortable with that, everything was a struggle. And then once I started to understand that, things started to get a little bit easier. So I like that. So the second question is, what throughout your career has been your go-to book that you've continually went back to that's maybe helped you gain your success and insights?
Book that I read in the first course I took in my Master's of Organizational Development and Leadership program, called Appreciative Inquiry. And the idea of appreciative inquiry, it's kind of the parent of the appreciative coaching framework that I use in my practice, is you want to identify your strengths as an organization, as an individual. Don't try to change what's not working, but build on what's working for you. And that book and that mindset completely changed my life and how I approach change, how I approach tackling problems and growth, all through a positive mindset.
Awesome. And the last question is, in today's moving world of technology, what is your favorite piece of technology that you find useful today?
Oh, I don't know if I should admit this, but I will. I have really become, I was a doubter and I was a naysayer, but ChatGPT and Claude, which are Claude is another AI platform, I have come to really appreciate the value they bring to the table, in terms of synthesizing information, collecting information from different public sources, but also other information that I feed it when I'm trying to tackle a problem or create a curriculum. It saves me so much time and is such a true reflection when I'm feeding it. It's such a true reflection of my expertise and the tools that I've already created, the experiences that I've had. It's become really an invaluable starting point for me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend with us today. It has been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and I really do hope that maybe we can have you back on again and unpack a few more pieces of this. You heard it here. You can go to the website. You can find out about the upcoming class, which registration will be open March 3rd through the 7th, I believe. If you're listening to this thinking, this is me, I need some help, I'm up against a barrier, this is a class for you, right? So again, thank you. It's been wonderful having you here. And yes, and for our listeners, if you've enjoyed the episode, don't forget to click the like button and follow us so that you get updates for the new upcoming episodes that are coming out. Don't forget to check us out on social media and on our website. And until next time, we appreciate you and thank you for listening.